recommendation by the vetting committee is not binding on National Council. Is the second side body of the party. Maybe they may be privy to certain information that the vetting committee didn't have, and nothing stopped the National Council from varying the recommendation of the vetting committee. Well, barring any unforeseen circumstances or activities happening, I'm very sure the number will be more than 5. So certainly there will be a special delegate college. For that one, I'm very certain. The process has not ended. We have a bigger task ahead of us in 2024 to become the first political party to have won election on 3 consecutive occasions, which means that their actions and inactions, their utterances should be measured to reflect the unity that we need in the party to also make the reconciliation after the election very easy for all of us.
Right, so you've been listening to the General Secretary of the NPP, Justin Kodua, on what to expect. But the issue just gone by. Here are some of your views that you share. Adreno Greatness says, I personally think that this isn't good for our country. If we really want to make progress as a country, we must allow the IGP to work regardless of the political party that appointed them. Going forward, I think our institutions must be independent. Tano Johnson says, on a most serious note, most of our current leaders keep on disappointing. I got so sad after listening to the leaked tape. We need to be more serious as a country. Mike Tachi says, anyone with the smallest imagination in viewing the topics discussed in the leaked audio as nothing is undeserving to be a Ghanaian. We are talking about plans to distort an election and take away the people's will. This can't be swept under the carpet. Let's get serious in Ghana. Kakra 19 says, so if the Mpari stays and NPP wins, what does it mean? Elizabeth Var says, that party stooge of a police, of a police commissioner must be removed ASAP. That's what you mean, the person on the tape. Well, people have made all sorts of permutations, actually connected the person to Ayawa, so West Wogon and all sorts of stuff. Oklu Joseph, what is Anyagba saying or trying to convey? Isn't he aware that there are individuals with significant power and influence who do not hold national positions within a political party? Ayuba Oceani says, nobody ever thought of how an IGP can influence elections until this tape was leaked. An insecure election will record low turnout, you meant. The tape must be handled with all seriousness. And Kimati Adea says, so Mr. Anyagba says he's not bothered about people planning to rig an election. Let's be honest. The final one is from Al-Hajj Suleiman. He says, I think the tape at best portrays a bootlicking gossip who wants to gain favor from a political heavyweight. Let's not kid ourselves. It is nearly impossible for an IGP to rig an election. Nonetheless, the mindset of the bootlicking gossip to subvert the will of the people, however impossible, and his partisanship is a source of worry, and thus the police service must purge itself of that person. Whatever he was saying is far more serious than Oliver Bakavoma's Facebook post. Okay, interesting. And somebody was also sharing an interesting thing about Nigeria. They say, what is the role of the transport or roads minister in elections? Go to Nigeria, you'll find out why. The roads, they dug into the middle of roads, saying that they are going to do construction work on the day of elections. So that people couldn't drive to go get... All right, anyway, Yeah, so it's been interesting. It's been an interesting period, Mr. Hiagba.
Yes, sir.
In your party, the 10 people who have been passed, and we have just shown their faces on our screens. You see their faces come up on your screens again. All 10 get the all clear to stand. And you'll be going for your super delegate election to prune them down to 5. People still continue to talk about, an even, not level playing field. They refer to what happened in Asin North, how Alan Shermanting was not dealt with fairly at all. I've seen that footage while he's on the stage speaking, and I'm told every other person who came on the stage came through the back, but when he got to Bamia's turn, he was taken through the front when the man was speaking and completely interrupted his speaking. His speech. People are not too comfortable what is going on. But tell us, what's going to happen from here?
Well, thank you very much, Samson. I think I'll join our national organizer in apologizing to Honorable Alan Shermanting for that event. To be honest with you, on the day I was at the rally grounds, but then I was moving around. I didn't see the event. And subsequently upon the report, I went to look at it. I think that...
very embarrassing.
Yes. But you see, going into that rally, there were conversations. I don't know if I have his permission to say this. Just yesterday, he referenced that to me again. There was a discussion about how to design the stage, learning from Kumau, because the stage there was smaller. And so there was conversation at our meetings at some point, long before the rally, before I even went to Kumau, to say, I went to Asin North, to say that why don't we have a situation where the people will sit will be separate from where you go to speak. So yesterday, in a certain conversation that dovetailed into this, the individual, I don't know if you would agree for me to mention his name, but the Minister of Information really he was part of that meeting, and he was insisting that we probably should do that.
That's a good idea.
Yes, but then so when this thing turned out, and yesterday the conversation said, well, if that had been done, we wouldn't have seen what happened yesterday. So I think it's a critical lesson that we'll take away going forward. Right. But I think that the national organizer who was in charge...
People have been touting their credentials as to who has been longest in the party, who has sacrificed for the party, and now there is a debate as to who has actually made the most sacrifice.
Yeah. But I think that is to be expected because really what it is that people try and establish themselves as deserving and credentials such as being part of the party, having legitimacy and a place in the party to represent. I think that is part of the conversation. The only thing is perhaps, if you ask me, is how we text it, how we say it so that it doesn't mean that we're trying to denigrate one or the other, but to say that, yes, this is my claim to be the flag bearer of the party, that I'm invested, and if you give me this privileged position, I'll protect it. I won't abuse it, because as a party member, I'm concerned. Who do we give that to? In fact, when I came to contest for General Secretary, that was a concern. Where is he from? We don't know him. And we're going to hand our party to him. So it's a legitimate concern for people to establish their place in the party. So that's fine. And the idea that there is...
Isn't it interesting that even Freddie Blake could become your chairman?
Yeah, I mean...
those of you who are in the party, you get questioned. Where are you coming from?
Well, yeah, so that's a different conversation that is in the past.
Anyway.
But I'm saying that to the extent that they are engaged in the conversation and people are calling for level playing field and the rest of it, it's for good measure. It's not as if that the playing field is uneven, but it's good in the conversation to elect the flag bearer, a very critical position like that, for people to feel that the process is fair, that everything is done in the way that there is balance. And the outcome of the vetting committee's report, their recommendation to National Council for Affirmation, tells you that so far the processes are fair. And so we hope that it will lead on from here. I think National Council sits down on the 20th to go through the recommendation from the vetting committee, which the General Secretary will present, and would decide to affirm or not affirm.
Is it possible anything can change?
Well, it's up to National Council, and you know the appeals. The petition, the open petition, I think it closed yesterday, and the appeals committee is supposed to sit between now and the 18th to be able to look at that. If anything comes up, I think that window is shut now, but National Council will look at it, and then from there, that the final issue will be drawn. But mind you, there's a code of conduct committee that is put in place. And so the candidates themselves, once they are affirmed by National Council, have a responsibility to adhere to a certain standard rules that they've all have undertaken to adhere to. And so as and when the campaign goes on, if there are complaints and a violation of the accepted code of conduct, I think that the code of conduct committee will look at it. But I anticipate that everything would go along as we anticipate the candidates themselves. This is a high-profile election, and they would conduct themselves as deserving of very established members of the party, whose very interest is to preserve the tradition and advance our interest in 2024.
Yeah, so tell me, we don't have the affirmation or otherwise from the national, is it the NEC? Is it a national?
Yes, NEC, National Council.
We don't have that
Council.
yet.
No. That will be done on the 20th when the National Council and National Executive Committee sits.
Right. And yet you have July 12 to 14 fixed for submission of petitions to the National Presidential Appeals Committee, which will sit on July 17 and July 18 to address any petition. What is the expectation? What are you expecting? I thought that, the committee will now come out and say, we have affirmed everybody, or this person has suffered, and so on. Then that's how petitions will come.
Right. So the process leading to the National Council is a termination, right? So from now till the 20th, the processes that are in place up until the 18th when the appeals committee sits, they can look at any petition. But my understanding is that there hasn't been any petition received as at that time.
So what would these petitions be about?
Well, if I have reason to believe that candidate A or aspirant A is not qualified because I know he's a member of the NDC.
Oh, I get it.
He's not a party person and all of that. Okay. So then I can bring that petition for him to be disqualified.
So on the basis of that,
yes,
it will feed into the work that they will have to do to decide to affirm or not to affirm.
Not to affirm. Okay. And so at that point, they would de-recommend him to National Council. And he has the right or the opportunity to come before that committee between the time period of the 18th, ending on the 18th,
all right,
to explain himself why he thinks that what the petition is saying is false.
Okay.
And so when that is done, I think the National Council then proceeds. But what I want to emphasize, something, is that the Code of Conduct Committee, very unique setup, that consists of the General Secretary, the Honorable Hackman Owusu-Ajiman, who is the chair of the Council of Elders, and Mr. Frank Davis, who is also chair of the Constitutional Legal Committee. They are constantly engaged in observing conduct that the candidates themselves have undertaken to adhere to. And so any breaches in that regard, I think, will draw their attention, and I think that appropriate sanctions will be applied.
All right. So, Felix, the qualified aspirants will be published by July 21, and then there'll be balloting for positions on the ballot paper on Monday, July 24. Then the first notice of poll will be for Tuesday, July 25. If the qualified candidates exceed 5, then a special electoral college will be held on August 26 to prune the number to 5. Fresh balloting of the final 5 qualified candidates will take place on August 28, with the final notice of poll fixed for August 31, and the National Congress to elect the flag bearer on the 4th of November 2023, with a runoff, if any, for 11th of November.
Well, I think it's a needlessly convoluted process. To be honest with you, I am not entirely sold on this superdelegates business. I think it was a knee-jerk response to the criticism that they faced in 2007 when 17 people showed up. I think they misapprehended the criticism at the time. The criticism had to do more with the flamboyance and opulence displayed at the time, and not necessarily the numbers. Because really, apart from perhaps creating opportunity for an unwieldy ballot paper which may confuse less enlightened voters. I don't see what real problem that poses. What are you going to do, for instance, if in the parliamentary primaries 17 people show up to contest one particular constituency? Are you going to have a super delegates conference on that one too? For me, I think it restricts the frontiers.
The amendment is specific to the president.
Yeah, so I'm asking that if you face the same problem in the parliamentary primaries, are you also going to organize?
Very unlikely.
So why then do you have to tamper with something that is not broken? What people were concerned about was the virtue of opulence. That is what you ought to have dealt with. You didn't need to tamper with the president, because what it does for me is to restrict the frontiers of democracy. You see, we are talking about how many superdelegates? About 900.
About 900, yeah.
You see, these are creme de la creme. Anybody who is everybody in the NPP. And indeed, Boache Jaku has complained that, you see, the tendency is for that process to be skewed towards the establishment candidate. Because, see, the people in that bracket are people who would naturally gravitate towards the center of power in order to benefit from whatever largesse that they think that there is. And so the tendency to act in ways
they are
that
not only serving officers.
I agree, but they are still prominent members. Yes, but they are still prominent members of the party, and they figure prominently in the affairs of the government, the party, and what have you. And they do not want to be seen to be upsetting the status quo or offending the establishment which is backing a particular candidate. So in terms of the fairness and the openness and transparency of the process, there's a bit of a difficulty. I don't think that they should have done that. They should still have allowed the broad masses of delegates to decide who qualifies. If you have to organize 2 rounds of voting, then I think that everybody who is eligible to vote within your party ought to have had a say in how the numbers are pruned out.
Well, then that would be the final election, right? If everybody is...
No, it's two rounds of elections.
That's what he's saying.
Yes, so then have one
But
process.
you can't have that.
No, but if you are interested in pruning down the numbers, then make it as broad-based as the actual election itself. That's my argument. Otherwise, that
would be the election.
It restricts the frontiers of democracy. That said, though, there have been some interest. First of all, I think they've actually failed to capture the imagination of the country this time round. In 2007 and in a previous contest, I think they managed to capture. But again, they are operating under the pall of a very, very gloomy performance in government.
Anyway.
And indeed.
So let's go to Kofi Bento.
Final point.
Some of the flag bearer hopefuls are already saying a few
Exactly. And indeed, I was going to comment on...
From Nigeria, Japan.
Yes. You see, some have said...
saying that, those who have been in government and brought us
some have said that
are not qualified.
Some have said that it is not the message that delegates want to hear. But you see, there's also room for moral courage in politics. There's a chunk of NPP supporters who fear that if there's no change in direction, the disappointment that is felt, that rings around this country, will lead to their defeat. So if a candidate is tapping into that base, he perhaps may have a strategy.
Okay,
we have to look at it.
Kofi Bento, let's hear you.
But would you give me a second?
I'm coming. Yes, hello, Kofi.
Yes, Samson. Our democracy moves on. I'm happy to see that, we are going through the processes. And again, I like to look at the bigger picture. 30 or so years into the Constitution, we seem to be making the strides. Felix is saying they didn't capture the imagination of the nation. Every nation must strive to the point where its elections become boring and uneventful. So I am happy that we go through this process and nobody really ticks. However, I am praying for the day when all members of a party will be able to be part of the selection of the presidential candidate. And I wish to submit to the parties that the technology exists. You can have a vote by cell phone. That programming can be done. They should each, make it one of their goals so that by 2024, they will create a platform where their members will register with their cell phones. And Ghana is one of the few countries in the world where cell phones can actually be traced to a person. And then on the day, people can actually vote by cell phone so that they can pick their flag bearers. That being said, I'm happy with the process. I think it is NPP's job to make sure that they give us the best candidate. However, everybody must note, there is no perfect choice generally in the world, especially in politics. You are looking at the person who is going to be more or less the worst of all the evils. There are only trade-offs. So when it comes to all the noises that are being made and all those things, I would hope that they will find a way for all these men who have shown themselves as wanting to lead the party to form themselves into a team. They are all formidable.
But you have already said that Bawumia is a better of the lot, right?
So again, I've said, and I don't run away from it, that it's about trade-offs. If you look at people like Honorable Gatti, this is a man who has served the party for years since when? And he's done a good job. Yes, it's a trade-off. There's something to gain, there's something to lose. Of course, I think Samira should be first lady of this country for many reasons. At the end of the day, you have other people too who can, tout whatever, they have.
Okay.
The issue is that there's a process, let them go through it. I'm happy that it's a boring process. I am hoping that next time around, we will have a situation where every party member participates in this process, and it's so boring that nobody even notices it. So it's our democracy moving forward. I pray that they will all continue to abide by the rules, and we'll have a good election, and hopefully the outcome will be something we'll all be happy with.
Thank you, Kofi. I noticed, and some of my viewers also say, I like Kofi's white beard. I also noticed. Yes. Richard, you wanted a minute.
Yeah. So I was just saying that, the process of opening it up, I think is fair. That's the incident of democracy. We should do that. But in the present scenario, what we have is what we're working with. So the Electoral College will decide, prune it down, and we'll go further. I think that even in that limited space, the number that is going to vote will still exercise democracy. It's a choice. They have a responsibility to reflect the spirit of the party, that we want this candidate or that candidate. And I believe truly, Samson, honestly, that our party has a spirit, that spirit will always determine the right candidate to come forth to lead our party. And so,
Comrade J. Japan launched his campaign. He made a brilliant speech, laden with a lot of values and the need to do a lot of things right. Kofi Kunedo Apreku has been speaking, Alan Shermanting. These people, you hear them say things that have not gone on right. Alan, for example, say if he had been listened to, things will not be the way they are.
He was a prominent member of the decision makers.
People say this is good, that people can be candid. But some of your party people say this will hurt them. Why should it be this way?
Well, Samson, there's one thing I know, that any one of these 10 individuals will be better than the NDC's alternative. And so the conversation we're having is trying to position our party for success in 2024. And we are determined to win the 2024 election. I believe if I were saying what some of the candidates are saying, I wouldn't say it that way. Right. I would say that the New Patriotic Party is the hope of this country. We have done our best until COVID. We're leading this economy in the right direction.
Thank you very much. Our time is up.